Gold speculation reaches a record low. Could this be the perfect time to start acquiring gold assets? Amir Nani, top resource entrepreneur and recipient of Casey's 10-Bagger Club, thinks so. In an environment where nearly 70% of TSX venture mining companies have a market cap of less than $5 million, Amir's new gold company, Brazil Resources, just raised $6.4 million through an oversubscribed private placement, with the biggest buyers being management, Doug Casey of Casey Capital Strategies, and legendary investor Rick Rule. BRI also just completed the acquisition of Brazilian Gold Corp, which will more than double their in-ground gold minerals. Brazil Resources seizing the opportunity.
Greetings and thank you for joining us at FutureMoneyTrends.com. I'm here with Greg Hunter. He's a former network and investigative correspondent for ABC News, Good Morning America, and CNN. He's the producer and creator of USAWatchdog.com, where you can receive unbiased news. Greg, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on Future Money Trends.
Greg, if I could start off with, you had a very successful career in the mainstream media, and basically, why did you leave?
Well, I'll tell you why. Back in 2007, I think the economy, first of all, is the big story of our times. I'm not an economy wonk. I just think it's the big story of all time, actually, in terms of what a story. It's the same thing in the Great Depression was the big story for pretty much 10, 15 years before the crash, or people who thought it would crash, and then basically all the way up until World War II became the big story. The Great Depression was a huge story. This is what we have coming is going to make the Great Depression. I've been saying this to my readers. It looks like a party. It's just in the Great Depression, we never had the U.S. dollar was completely unparalleled in the world, and we were a creditor nation, and our credit rating was legitimately AAA. Mm-hmm. And now what's happened? The dollar is sinking. Russia is planning on possibly dumping our bonds, and I think ultimately they will do it. When we put sanctions on it, we couldn't look any weaker, and the dollar could crash. More than one PhD level source has said that. This is not some crazy thing I've invented. These are, David Stockman, the former White House budget director, the John Williams at shadowstats.com, Mark Farber, a millionaire investor, Jim Rogers, a multimillionaire investor. The list goes on of credentialed people. Paul Craig Roberts, former Assistant Treasury Secretary. I mean, the list of people who say we're in deep doo-doo. Any way you cut it, it's just a matter of timing. But we're in deep, deep trouble. Lawrence Kotlikoff, PhD of economics at Boston University, who says the real gap, along with 10 Nobel Prize-winning economists, the deficit that we're really on the hook for is $200 trillion. So,
wow.
I just think it's a big. How I got started in this, I think it's a big story at the time. I started doing this at CNN. And in 2007, I started following the economy, and I did it like a investigative story. And an investigative reporter, all you do, really, I want to boil it down to a simple term, like playing basketball and sticking a leather ball through a metal ring. That's what it is. That's really is in the simplest terms.
Okay.
It's more complicated than that, but that's what it is. And being an investigative reporter is just looking at data. What does the data say? What can you back up? What do the facts say? And the facts said we were in a recession. In 2007, they remember all this talk of how, subprime's going to be contained. Oh, no, we're not really in a recession. No, we were. You can't knock out, I said this on the air at CNN, you can't knock out housing, autos. Housing and autos were tail spinning. And the banks, and they were in big trouble. And I was saying this is what probably got me. And so how did I start this? I'm getting to it. I'll wait for it. And I started saying all the banks were in trouble. Well, I was on the air with Ali Velshi, who was a business reporter. Mm-hmm. And he was like, look at me like I had two heads. I said, no, they're all in trouble. All my sources say they're in trouble. This is going to blow up. They're in trouble. Well, that was in 07 and early 08. And I'm actually on my site. If you go about the About section, you take a look at the economy, their story site. Mm-hmm. I believe the uranium, produced a note how they were robo signing was, and I was one of the first people to do this. That's fraud, forgery, and perjury. That wasn't, signing stuff fast. But in that About section, I say all the banks are in trouble. It's my reoccurring theme. All the banks are in trouble. Hey, they were. But see, I didn't understand when you have Dick Parsons on the board of Citigroup, and he's, the CEO of Time Warner, that I didn't get the memo that, don't say that. Don't tell the truth. My God. talk about the guy with two heads, or the guy that can, swing a golf club with one hand, or, talk about, Jody Arias, and, see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I got my contract not renewed.
Okay, so did they?
I was out in July of 2008. Out, boom, hit the street. Oh, I had at CNBC and at Bloomberg and CBS, and I sincerely think I was blackballed.
Okay,
so it wasn't my reporting.
Did anyone ever tell you, like, don't report something, or they just kind of just didn't renew your contract?
Oh, they just didn't renew my contract. When I said, what happened? Well, we're just going a different direction. And I had two successful radio auditions at CNN Radio. And actually, the president or vice president of CNN Radio, when they heard that they were not going to renew my contract, called me and said, we'd love to have CNN Radio. That lasted for about a day. And then, didn't return my calls.
Now, do any of your former colleagues watch USA Watchdog, or do you keep in touch with them?
Yes, some of my former colleagues and some of my non-former colleagues do, and I know that because Neil Cavuto told a friend of mine who was interviewing him, he called me and said, hey, give me a question for Neil Cavuto. I'm going to have him on the air tomorrow. I said, okay, ask him why Bank of America got $200 billion. They got, $127 billion forgiven by the Treasury Secretary at the time, Tim Geithner. This was in 2011, I think. And it's on my site. You can look it up. Mm-hmm. And they had $73 billion forgiven. This is one bank. $200 billion forgiven or taken off their books at Bank of America. And I said, ask them why they complain about that, but they talk about $30 million in government waste. Why don't they talk about that? And he gets him on the air, and he recorded it, and he played it for me. He gets him on the he played when he was a guest, and he said, hell yeah, Neil Cavuto knows who you are. And he said, hey, a friend of mine, Greg Hunter, do you know who he is? Yes. He's got a site, USA Watchdog. I look at it every day. He's the vice president of Fox Business. And, well, listen, I say the things that they can't say, that they'll get in trouble for saying. That, oh, my God, you can't have John Williams on for 12 minutes talking about how if Russia sells their bonds, that, could start a stampede, and we got $16 trillion plus of dollar or dollar-like assets, according to John Williams, who runs shadowstats.com. He got his economics degree at Dartmouth, I think, Ivy League. And he works for hedge funds and Fortune 500 company, although his client list is a secret.
Yeah.
Back to why the heck did I start this? I started this because it was a huge story. It was a huge story. I started reporting. I walked into CNN Money, and CNN Fortune magazine. CNN Money and Fortune are together, right? And I walked into a meeting one day and said, hey, this is back in 2007 or early 2008. I said, hey, the derivative market is $600 trillion. Where is that traded? The derivative markets, according to the Bank of International Settlements, is $600 trillion. Where is that traded? And they just looked at me. And I said, wow, we're missing a huge story. We don't know where a $600 trillion market is traded. Well, the answer is it's traded between you and me. And when you look at the derivative market and there's $600 trillion, you think, what does that mean? It's like, it's like me speaking Mandarin.
Yeah.
But the $600 trillion derivative market, this is why did I get started? Oh, well, there's no guarantees. There's no rules. What makes a good derivative? Anything you can get Coors, Fitch, and Moody's to throw AAA on. That's what makes a good derivative. So there's no guarantees. There's nobody there's no commissioner involved. Well, AIG insured the world, and they didn't put any money back for paying claims. And so when it finally blew up, oops, government bailout.
Yeah, like who makes these decisions, Greg, to not report on these things?
Part of it's reason it's complicated, and part of it is, I actually had a friend of mine who worked at Bloomberg, an award-winning producer, Gary Matsumoto. He won an Emmy. He actually won Bloomberg's first Emmy. And he says, I remember when I first heard you say all the banks were in trouble, and I said it repeatedly because they were. He says, I knew you were gone right then. Wow. I said, I didn't get the memo. I thought I was supposed to be at the network at the cutting edge of media. I thought I was supposed to break stories and warn people and tell people what was coming down. This is before Lehman. Lehman blew up in October. And I was talking about it in 07 and 08. All of the banks were in trouble. Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner got into a little tiff with, I want to say, who's that weasel, doing God's work? Lloyd Blankfein, or was it Jamie Dimon? One of those two. And he told them, he said, all the banks needed a bailout. They were all in trouble. They were all in trouble. Come on. They're still in trouble.
So when you were working in the news media, did you feel like people, or I guess looking in hindsight, are Americans receiving news or are they receiving propaganda?
They lie by omission. They lie by omission. And if they have somebody like David Stockman on, who, was White House budget director for 4 years, he happens to know something about big numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, he says this is a disaster. The money printing is absolutely, this is nirvana, and they're trying to pull this back. And, and we're in a very weak position, and history is pretty clear. Carl Denninger said, this is a good quote, history is pretty clear what happens to countries that print lots of their own currency. It's very clear. There's no, gray area here.
Well, Greg, if I could ask you about a current story that, because I know your analysis is very unbiased and you are digging for the truth. Russia is the big story of the day. We saw that RT reporter resign on air yesterday. What is your analysis of what's going on in Russia right now? And if you could connect that to the dollar as well.
Well, my analysis is, wow, what a, I went out to dinner last night, and I took all the newspapers, I took all the material I had, and I started reading about Russia. I mean, everything. I read everything. And what I've come up with is, it was, of course, they omitted this fact out of the mainstream media, and what they won't report was we spent $5 billion. This was reported in overseas media and other media. It's a good number. We spent $5 billion fostering this upheaval, this protest. We spent $5 billion. Now, did anybody think about what the hell? And we did it during the Olympics. Remember this? That, by the time the Olympics, the last little trumpet, the last medal was hung around somebody's neck. The thing was with this guy who supposedly died of a heart attack, the president of Ukraine. He was out of office and in hiding, and the European Union said he was is guilty of charging him with human rights violations for the 100 people massacred over there in this square and during the protests, right? More than 100 people, and then 500 injured. They started shooting, and so I'm thinking to myself, you spent $5 billion. Didn't anybody think, hey, what happens if we get control? Because there's gas pipelines there. There's a rich natural gas field in western Ukraine. There's a major strategic Russian port in the Crimean Peninsula. I mean, this is worse than, this is more important than the base in Tartus, which I said more than a year ago, or a couple of years ago, that Russia was not going to back out of Syria. They got a naval base in Tartus on the eastern Mediterranean. They need that. That's strategic. Look at a map and see, where is Russia going to get their ships out? Whoa, well, way up north around, all the way around Europe, or way out west. That's it. So this is their port in the southeast of the world, of that region. And I'm thinking to myself, well, didn't they realize, the headlines in the USA Today this week are, U.S. leverage over Putin limited. Yeah, nobody in Europe wants to even have sanctions. They've already taken, NATO and taken, military action off the table. So what did they think Putin was going to do when he knew he was head of the KGB, he was a colonel in the KGB? He knew they were spending money to overthrow the government which is pro-Russian, in Kiev, okay? What did they think he was going to do? I mean, this is stupid.
Yeah.
Hello? Did you think he was just, we got a major seaport there that can house our nuclear submarines and our fleet, and the Black Sea Fleet? Go ahead, you can have it. It's okay. You come on in. What do you think that he was going to do? And listen, I am pro-America. I love America. But I'm thinking, what did these nimwits, didn't you think they would say, hey, let's get together and let's have sanctions, and find out that, if Merkel would say, no, we get deals with Russia, we're not going to sanction them. We need them. The UK, we're not going to sanction them. The economy in Europe is not fixed. It's teetering on insolvency. It's been propped up by the dollar swaps that the U.S. has with Europe, which nobody wants to even ask a question about, to Yellen, or now the new chairman, Yellen. Hey, you still got those dollar swaps open in Europe, where you're taking their euro, you're giving them their dollars, and we're continually bailing their banks out, just like our banks out, which is cut down to $30 billion a month that the banks get each and every month, $360 billion that nobody will even ask about.
Well, what do you think Russia's...
any kind of planning? And this is what I'm saying too, but, it's brilliant. They're playing... No, they're playing checkers. They're playing checkers with a brutal, intelligent, guy that's not going to care two licks about gunning down people. I mean, this is a brutal guy that you're dealing with. And this is your plan? This is your plan? That was your plan. Your plan was to knock the government off, and now, we don't know, we can't get sanctions, and we're certainly not going to go to war. And what? Who is running the ship? What imbecile is running the ship? Who made that decision? We're going to pony up $5 billion. We're going to knock off the government. Then what? Well, what happens if Russia, invades? They did.
Yeah.
Boy, we couldn't look any dumber, and we couldn't look any weaker in the world.
Well, Greg, do you think this is done on purpose, or do you think this is just stupidity?
I can only come up with it's stupid. I can figure this out. I'm not a foreign policy whiz.
Yeah.
My strong suit is just looking at data. I'm an investigative reporter by trade. Been one since before, and I don't have any pedigree. My daddy was a machinist. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get up to the networks because, wink, wink, your dad was somebody. No, my dad was nobody. I loved him. He was smart. But, I'm a farm boy from Missouri, and my dad was a machinist. And so, all I can do is look at the data, and the data shows how stupid. What did they think Putin was going to do?
What do you think going forward? What's your assessment of the whole situation as far as I know he said something about getting away from the dollar system?
Well, if he wants to crash the economy, he's got the perfect pin to the economy and our whole situation for the last 5 years is a bubble waiting for a pinprick. I mean, according to people like former Treasury Secretary Paul Craig Roberts, take this in. Get this. Your listeners should understand this. He said offhandedly, well, we used to, step our foot on the gas for 6 months or 9 months and the economy would come back. In other words, they'd cut rates and they'd, have liquidity and they do, he said, we've been doing this in 2009?
Yeah.
2008? Well, where are we? What do we just have? Retail sales numbers rolling over? We still have, if you do unemployment the way the Bureau of Labor Statistics did it in 1994 and earlier, we got 23% unemployment. Unemployed and underemployed. And so, we are in a very weak position. And we're still printing $30 billion just for the banks and another $35 to buy our debt. And who knows what they're doing covertly. That's the overt part. That's what they say they're doing. Some of my sources that say they have connections with the Fed and behind, closed door meetings, it's not $65 billion a month. It's $125 billion a month, or it's $115, or it's in excess of $100 billion a month.
Wow.
What they're saying is everything's a big fat lie.
So when you get all this information, you report the news on it. What do you do personally? I know you bought gold, but I mean, as far as like financially, do you have any?
How do you know I bought gold?
Huh?
How do you know I bought gold?
Well, I don't know you bought gold, but I'm assuming you bought some gold.
Well, I bought this site. I cashed out. John Williams told me in 2010. He said, "Sell everything out of the market. Just sell it, and do something else, and put something that you can control, and buy something you can put in." So what I did was I put my money into this. Oh, do I have a few gold coins? Yeah, few. My money really is in USA Watchdog, and it took me 4 years to build it to where it's something. I mean, I remember when I first wrote my first articles that I had 10 people. I'd spend 6-7 hours writing an article. I'd spend the same amount of time writing, a page and a half, an article with links and whatever. And, and I would have 10 people see it. And, it's pretty hard after being, I'd be at Good Morning America. The audience was 5 million people.
Yeah.
So, but you know what? Let me tell you, and I want to, wham. That was the best thing that ever happened to me. Now I have I get 400,000 people a month, up to 400,000. I think January's 400,000. Last month was a short month. It was 300 and something thousand visitors. I've got 7 million video views. I've been doing videos since really just June.
Yeah.
I've been on since 2009. I wrote a lot of pieces up, and then my consultant told me, you really need to do video. You need to do some wrap-up or something. But I finally started doing it in earnest. I had maybe 100,000 video views from various sundry things I did up until June of 12, and then I started doing these interviews and started doing the weekly news wrap-up, which you just heard part of my weekly news wrap-up with the stupidity of Russia. I mean, well, how we handled this.
Yeah.
And what we did, I mean, why do we spend money to have, now we got an invasion and he's got leaving. If you think he's leaving, it's not happening. I mean, he's leaving, why?
Got no reason.
So, anyway.
Well, great.
That's what I put my money in the site, but I do think people should have gold and silver if they can afford it.
It's a great lesson for people, though, is investing in yourself, investing in your own business for the new economy. Greg Hunter with usawatchdog.com. You can get videos and his write-ups there, usawatchdog.com. Greg, do you have an e-letter that people can sign up for?
I just have, I don't charge anything. I just have, some saying you can, I don't know, what is it, Google's, feed burner.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, I try to make it free. I want to make it as open source as I can, because I want people to get the news, and I have Google ads. That's all. I don't sell anything. I sell zero investments. Although I think people should have gold and silver, I do not sell it. You cannot buy it from me. I don't care where you get it. And you should have also a new set of tires, and you should have, everything's I look at the world like, woo, in my red pill way. Everything's on sale right now. It's everything, what do I need? Everything. Toilet paper, soap, shampoo, canned foods, water, tires, get your car fixed, get your house fixed. Every week that you get that this doesn't blow sky high is a gift. You need everything. If you don't have money for gold and silver, it's fine. Buy canned food. Buy food you can store. Even if, for nothing or the reason that it's never going to be cheaper.
Yeah, no, it's a great way to think because ultimately you're going to buy it anyway, so you might as well exchange your dollars now. I bought an extra shoes for my children. We buy a lot of extra things for the kids.
Everything's on. Everything. Look at like you do. Every time you walk out your door, everything's on sale because they're talking about this currency reset. It's real. They're talking about bank bail-ins. They are going to be real. I mean, here's another stat for you. I'll close with this stat. This is just terrifying. And that there's about $10 trillion. And we just had this Harvard-trained professor. I think he's a professor up in Michigan or Michigan State or somewhere. He just took $1 million out of Bank of America. And what did he talk about? He talked about, well, there's only 40-some-odd billion in insurance, and there's $6 trillion in deposits. Well, there's in insured deposits. There's $10 trillion in deposits. We got $40 billion insuring in the overt part, the insurance of $6 trillion. There's $10 trillion on deposits. So at the very least, there's going to be $4 trillion that's going to go poof. Right?
Yeah.
And the money's, I mean, it's unbelievable. People are just like, well, that's never, and they always say, well, no FDIC insured account has ever lost a penny. Yeah, that's right, but there's a first time for everything. And you got $40 billion to insure 6. That's like half.